She scratched the wrong car, a blue Mercedes that belonged to a man who doesn't forgive mistakes. Now he's tracked her down, standing at her door with eyes that promise consequences, and Riley Brooks has $18 and nowhere to run. What he demands from her will cost more than money. Riley Brooks did not plan to change her life on a Thursday night. It happened in the space of a heartbeat. She turned the wheel of her beat-up Honda, trying to wedge it into a tight spot outside the closed hardware store. The pavement was slick from earlier rain. Her hands trembled from a double shift on her feet. She misjudged the angle by inches. A sickening scrape cut through the silence. Her body went rigid. She hit the brakes hard and squeezed her eyes shut, breath trapped somewhere between her ribs and throat. The sound replayed in her skull like a scream. "No," she breathed. "God, no." She forced herself to look. The car beside hers wasn't just any car. It was a sleek black Mercedes sedan, rain-beaded and gleaming even under the dim streetlights. Chrome accents caught the glow like jewelry. Tinted windows reflected nothing back. In this worn-down neighborhood of cracked sidewalks and faded storefronts, it looked like a predator among prey. And now it had a deep white scar running the length of the rear panel, where her rust-spotted bumper had made contact. Riley's stomach plummeted. She climbed out on unsteady legs, her sneakers splashing in a puddle. She crouched low, heart hammering, and traced her fingers near the damage without touching it. The scratch was vicious, long, deep enough that she could see bare metal glinting underneath the ruined paint. "This is so bad," she whispered. Her first instinct was immediate and clear. Get back in your car, drive away, right now. The street was empty. The diner down the block had already closed for the night. The one security camera mounted on the corner pole probably hadn't worked in years. The apartment windows above the shops were dark. Nobody saw. Nobody knew. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Rent was 3 days overdue. Her bank account had $47 until Friday's paycheck. She had $18 in her wallet and a tank running on fumes. A repair like this, on a car like this, would cost more than she made in 2 months. You cannot afford this. The voice in her head was cold and logical. If you leave now, no one will ever know it was you. What Riley didn't know was that this single decision, this moment of choice in the rain, would drag her into a world where honesty was a currency far more dangerous than debt. Riley stared at her reflection in the black-tinted glass. She looked exhausted, hollowed out, hair falling loose from her ponytail, uniform wrinkled, dark shadows carved under her eyes. She looked breakable next to this machine of wealth and power. She thought about her father, about the words he'd repeated so many times growing up, before the debt collectors came, before everything fell apart. We do not lie, Riley. Even when it hurts. Her throat tightened. She glanced around one more time. The street was still deserted. Rain dripped from awnings and pooled in the gutters. Somewhere distant, a siren wailed and faded. She dug into her canvas bag with shaking hands. Old receipts, a broken hair tie, a pen missing its cap. Finally, she pulled out the small notepad she used for taking orders at the diner, the one with the faded logo of Rosie's all-night cafe across the top. Her fingers were numb as she clicked the pen. She braced the paper against the hood of her car and started writing, pressing hard to keep her hands steady. I'm so sorry. I accidentally scratched your car while parking. My name is Riley Brooks. I work at Rosie's all-night cafe on Merchant Street. I don't have much money right now, but I will pay for the damage. Whatever it costs. I'll find a way. Phone 332-555-8194. The ink smudged where a raindrop landed. Her handwriting wobbled. She hesitated, then underlined her full name twice. Her hand hovered over the paper. This would ruin her. She knew it. But the alternative, Lying, hiding, pretending felt worse. It felt like becoming someone she wasn't. Riley folded the note once, carefully, and slid it under the driver's side wiper blade of the Mercedes. The paper stood out white against the black paint, a confession in the rain. Her chest ached, but underneath the fear was something else. Something that felt almost like relief. She'd done what was right. That wouldn't erase the consequences, but maybe she could still look herself in the mirror. Maybe. She took one last look at the damage, her stomach twisting, then turned and walked toward the corner bus stop, pulling her thin jacket tighter against the cold. She had work again in 8 hours. If this moment hit you the way it hit me while writing it, take a second to subscribe. It tells me you want more stories like this, and it truly helps me keep making them. Comment where you're watching from, and tell me, have you ever been trapped between doing what's right and doing what's safe? Because Riley's about to learn that sometimes, honesty is the most expensive choice you can make. 2 hours later. The street looked different now. The rain had stopped. The wet asphalt reflected amber streetlights in streaks of gold and shadow. A stray cat darted between parked cars. The neighborhood was still. A black Range Rover rolled slowly down the block and stopped behind the scratched Mercedes. Seconds later, a second vehicle, a silver Audi, pulled up alongside, blocking the view from the intersection. While Riley slept, exhausted and unaware, the man who owned that Mercedes was about to read her note, and nothing in her working-class life had prepared her for who he really was. 4 men emerged first, all in dark suits despite the hour, their eyes sweeping the empty street with the practiced alertness of soldiers. 1 stayed by the Range Rover. 2 moved ahead, flanking. The last opened the rear door. Damon Hayes stepped onto the sidewalk. He adjusted the rolled cuffs of his black dress shirt as the door closed behind him. The fabric stretched across his forearms, revealing the edge of a tattoo that disappeared beneath the sleeve. He wore no tie, no jacket despite the chill in the air. He didn't need armor. His presence alone changed the atmosphere, made the night feel heavier, more dangerous. His dark hair was cut sharp at the sides, longer on top and swept back. A closely trimmed beard framed a jaw that looked carved from stone. His eyes, dark, unreadable, and unsettlingly calm, moved slowly across the quiet street, taking in every detail, every shadow. One of the men, his right hand Martin's, approached. "We're clear, boss." The meeting went smooth. "You want to head back?" Damon gave a single nod and moved toward the Mercedes. Then he stopped. His gaze traveled from the hood down the length of the car until it landed on the brutal white scratch cutting across the rear door. The mark looked obscene against the pristine black paint. Martin swore under his breath. "You've got to be kidding me. Who the hell?" He pulled out his phone. "I can pull security footage from the block. We'll find them in an hour." Damon raised one hand. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse. He simply studied the damage for a long moment, then reached for the folded paper caught under the wiper blade. He opened it. The handwriting was uneven, rushed. The letters slanted slightly. The paper was damp at the edges, ink blurred in one corner from the rain. He read it once, then again. "Someone damaged the car?" Another guard asked from behind. "You want us to track them down?" Damon didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed fixed on the name at the bottom. Riley Brooks. Something about the note didn't fit. People didn't do this. In his world, people ran. They lied. They begged for mercy or made excuses. They didn't stand alone in the rain and write confessions with their full name, their workplace, their phone number. They didn't apologize. What Damon Hayes saw in that rain-smudged note would change both their lives forever. Because in his world of lies and violence, Riley's honesty wasn't just rare. It was dangerous. He looked up at the neon sign half a block down. Rosie's all-night cafe. The lettering was faded, one letter flickering. The place was nothing. Cheap booths, burnt coffee, the kind of spot where people went when they had nowhere else to go. He'd been inside once, late, after a deal that went sideways. He'd needed a quiet corner and bitter coffee to think. He remembered red vinyl, cracked floors, a tired waitress who didn't ask questions. Damon folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket. "Boss?" Martins asked, uncertain. Damon turned back toward the Range Rover, his expression unreadable. "Find out everything about Riley Brooks," he said quietly. "Where she lives, who she knows, everything." Martins frowned. "You want us to collect the debt?" Damon opened the car door and paused, one hand on the frame. His jaw tightened slightly, the only crack in his calm. "No," he said. "I'll handle this one myself." He climbed into the back seat, and the door closed with a heavy, final sound. The vehicles pulled away into the night, leaving only the scratched Mercedes and the empty street behind. And somewhere across the city, Riley Brooks tried to sleep, unaware that her honesty had just drawn the attention of the most dangerous man she would ever meet. Riley hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the scratch, that brutal white line cutting through black paint like an accusation. She'd stared at her phone all morning, waiting for it to ring, her stomach twisted into knots that wouldn't loosen. By the time her shift started at Rosie's, she felt hollowed out. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and grease, the same as always. The lunch rush had thinned to a handful of regulars. Riley moved through the motions, refilling cups, wiping down tables, forcing smiles that didn't reach her eyes. "You look like death," Chloe said, appearing beside her at the coffee station. Her friend had worked the morning shift and should have left an hour ago, but she'd stayed, perched on a stool near the register, watching Riley with concern. Riley's hand trembled as she set down the pot. "I did something stupid." "How stupid?" Chloe leaned in, lowering her voice. "Like forgot to pay a bill stupid, or like committed a felony stupid?" "I scratched someone's car last night." Riley's throat felt tight. "A really, really expensive car. And I left a note." Chloe's eyes widened. "You left a note? Riley?" "I know." Riley pressed her palms against the counter. "I couldn't just drive away. I couldn't." "How expensive are we talking?" "Mercedes. Black. The kind with tinted windows and chrome that probably costs more than I'll make in my entire life." Riley's voice dropped to a whisper. "The scratch was bad, Chloe. Really bad. I don't know what I'm going to do. When they call, I don't have the money. I can't." Riley thought the worst that could happen was a lawsuit. She had no idea that the owner of that Mercedes was already inside the diner, watching her. The bell above the diner door chimed. Riley glanced up out of habit, her customer service smile already forming. Then it died on her lips. 4 men in dark suits walked in first. Not the kind of men who came to Rosie's. These men moved with purpose, with awareness, their eyes scanning the room like they were clearing a building. One positioned himself by the door. Another moved toward the back exit. The conversation in the diner didn't just quiet. It stopped. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Coffee cups froze mid-sip. Then he walked in. Riley's breath caught. The man from the image she'd seen 100 times in nightmares since last night. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Dark hair, darker eyes, a presence that seemed to pull all the air out of the room. He moved like someone who'd never had to ask for anything twice in his life. Damon Hayes. She knew who he was. Everyone in this neighborhood knew the name, even if they pretended not to. Whispers in alleys, stories that ended badly. The kind of man you crossed the street to avoid, and she'd scratched his car. Riley's knees went weak. The blood drained from her face so fast she thought she might collapse. Beside her, Chloe grabbed her arm, nails digging in. "Riley," Chloe breathed. I know." Damon's gaze swept the diner slowly, methodically, until it landed on her. His eyes locked onto hers with the precision of a predator spotting prey. He didn't smile, didn't speak. He just looked at her, and in that look, Riley saw recognition. He started walking toward her. His men flanked him, and the few remaining customers suddenly found reasons to leave. Bills were thrown on tables. Chairs scraped. The couple in the corner booth practically ran for the door. Within seconds, the diner was empty except for Riley, Chloe, the cook frozen in the kitchen window, and the men in suits. Damon stopped 3 feet from the counter. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Taller than she'd realized. The tattoo on his forearm was some kind of serpent, coiled and detailed. His presence pressed down on her like weight, like gravity had intensified in his vicinity. "Riley Brooks," he said. His voice was low, controlled, with an edge that suggested violence held carefully in check. It wasn't a question. Riley's mouth was dry. She managed a nod. "Yes. You left this on my car." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper, her note, now unfolded and creased. He set it on the counter between them with deliberate care. Her handwriting looked childish in his hands. Desperate. Yes, Riley stammered. "I'm so sorry. I was trying to park and I didn't mean to. I swear I'll pay for the damage. I just need time. I can do payments. The repair," Damon interrupted quietly, "will cost $12,000. The number hit Riley like a physical blow, but the debt wasn't the real problem. What Damon Hayes was about to offer her would be far more dangerous than any amount of money. The number hit her like a physical blow. Riley actually stepped back, her spine hitting the shelves behind her. Coffee mugs rattled. 12. She couldn't even finish the word. Her vision blurred at the edges. I can't." "I know," Damon said. His eyes hadn't left her face. He seemed to be studying her, reading every flicker of panic, every desperate calculation running through her mind. "You make roughly $1,900 a month working here. Your rent is $750 for a studio apartment you share with a roommate. You have $47 in your bank account as of this morning. You're 3 days late on rent and 2 months behind on your student loans." Riley's blood turned to ice. So let's be clear," Damon continued, his voice never rising but somehow filling every corner of the room. "You can't pay me. Not in installments. Not over time. You couldn't pay me if you worked for the next year and gave me everything you earned." Tears burned behind Riley's eyes. Beside her, Chloe looked ready to bolt or fight. Riley couldn't tell which. "I'll figure something out," Riley said, hating how her voice shook. "I'll get a second job. No," Damon said simply. He tilted his head slightly, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite curiosity, but close. "You left a note." Riley blinked. "What?" "You could have driven away." His voice softened, just barely, but it was enough to make the statement feel more dangerous, not less. "No cameras caught your plates. No witnesses. You could have disappeared. But you stayed. You wrote your name, your phone number, your place of work." He tapped the note with one finger. "Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Riley whispered. For a long moment, Damon just looked at her. Something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or recognition. Then it was gone, locked back behind that unreadable mask. "The right thing," he repeated, almost to himself. Then he straightened, and the weight of his attention became unbearable. "I have a different way for you to settle this debt, Riley Brooks. You're going to come work for me." Work for you? Riley's voice cracked. Doing what? Damon's mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but close enough to terrify her. Whatever I tell you to. You start tonight. He turned and walked toward the door, his men falling into formation around him. At the threshold, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. Be ready at 8. Don't make me come find you twice. Riley thought she understood what accepting Damon's offer meant. She had no idea that the world she was about to enter would make $12,000 seem like pocket change. Then he was gone, and the bell above the door chimed cheerfully, obscenely out of place. Riley stood frozen behind the counter, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Chloe grabbed both her arms. Riley, Chloe said, her voice shaking. You can't go with him. You know who that is. You know what he does. You can't. But Riley was already thinking about the $12,000. About the way Damon Hayes had looked at her when she said it was the right thing to do. About the fact that she'd given him her name, her number, her entire life on a piece of paper. She'd made her choice last night in the rain. Now she had to live with it. Riley stood outside the address Damon had texted her at exactly 7:53. She was early. She was always early. Her mother used to say being late was another form of lying. The building was in a part of the city she'd only ever passed through on buses, where the streets were clean and the streetlights actually worked. Black glass and steel stretched up into the darkening sky. A doorman in a crisp uniform stood beneath the awning, watching her with the kind of polite suspicion reserved for people who clearly didn't belong. Riley clutched her phone tighter. She'd changed 3 times before leaving her apartment. Nothing she owned seemed right for wherever she was going. She'd settled on dark jeans, a plain black blouse, and the only pair of flats that didn't have scuffed toes. She felt like a child playing dress-up. At exactly 8, a black town car pulled up to the curb. The rear window rolled down, and Martins, the man who'd been with Damon at the diner, gestured to her. Get in. Riley's legs felt like lead as she crossed the sidewalk and slid into the back seat. Martins sat across from her, silent and imposing. The door closed with an expensive, muffled sound, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. Where are we going? Riley asked quietly. Martins didn't look at her. The boss will explain everything. The silence stretched. Riley watched the city slide past. Shops and restaurants she'd never been able to afford. People in clothes that probably cost more than her rent. She twisted her hands in her lap, her stomach churning. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to another building, this one older but somehow even more intimidating. Stone facade, brass fixtures, the kind of place that whispered old money and older secrets. Martins led her inside, past another doorman, into an elevator that required a key card to operate. They rode up in silence. When the doors opened, Riley stepped into a hallway that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. Soft lighting, dark wood, art on the walls that was probably worth more than her life. Martins stopped at a heavy door and knocked twice. A voice from inside, Damon's voice, said, "Come in." What Riley was about to learn in that office would shatter every assumption she'd made about survival, about safety, and about the price of her own integrity. The office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, lights stretching out like a field of stars. Dark leather furniture. A desk made of what looked like black marble. And behind it, Damon Hayes, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves still rolled to his elbows, reviewing something on a laptop. He glanced up as they entered. His gaze moved over Riley with the same calculating precision as before. "Leave us," he told Martins. Martins nodded and closed the door behind him. The sound of it clicking shut felt like a trap springing. Damon stood and came around the desk. He moved with that same unhurried confidence, like he had all the time in the world and knew it. Riley forced herself to stand still, to meet his eyes even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. "You came," he said. "You didn't give me much choice," Riley replied, then immediately regretted the edge in her voice. Damon's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "There's always a choice, Riley. You could have run, changed your number, disappeared." He tilted his head. "But you didn't." Because running would have been another form of lying. But she didn't say that out loud. Damon gestured to one of the leather chairs. "Sit." Riley sat, perched on the edge like she might need to bolt. Damon leaned against his desk, arms crossed, studying her. "The repair to my car is $12,000, he said, his voice matter of fact. "You offered to pay in installments. Let's do the math. Even if you gave me every spare dollar you earned, which you can't, because you need to eat and pay rent, it would take you approximately 3 years to clear the debt." He paused. "I don't wait 3 years for anything." Riley's throat tightened. "Then what do you want from me?" "I want you to work for me," Damon said. "I own several establishments. Private clubs, high-end venues, places that require discretion and competence." His eyes never left hers. "You'll work events, serve drinks, assist with whatever needs to be done. 6 months. After that, your debt is cleared." 6 months. Riley's mind raced. What kind of events? "The kind where people don't ask questions," Damon said. "The kind where you'll see things you'll need to forget. The kind where your honesty," he said the word like it was foreign, curious, "will be a liability if you don't learn to keep your mouth shut." Fear crawled up Riley's spine. "And if I say no?" Damon was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, which somehow made it worse. "Then I'll take you to court. I'll get a judgment. I'll garnish your wages until you're living on nothing. You'll lose your apartment. You'll lose everything." He leaned forward slightly. "Or you can work for me, clear the debt in 6 months, and walk away with your life intact." "Intact," Riley repeated bitterly. "You mean if I survive whatever it is you do in these private clubs?" Something flickered in Damon's expression. Annoyance, maybe, or something darker. "You think I brought you here to hurt you?" "I don't know what you brought me here for," Riley shot back. Her hands were shaking, so she pressed them flat against her thighs. "I don't know you. I don't know what you want. All I know is that everyone in my neighborhood knows your name, and they don't say it out loud." Damon straightened. For a long moment, he just looked at her, his jaw tight. Then he moved to the windows. Hands in his pockets, his back to her. "I brought you here because you did something no one in my world does," he said quietly. "You told the truth. You stood in the rain and wrote your name on a piece of paper and took responsibility for your mistake." He turned back to face her. "That kind of integrity is rare. Useful. So you want to use me," Riley said. "I want to give you an option that doesn't destroy you," Damon corrected. "Work for me, and you're under my protection. No one touches you. No one threatens you. You'll make more in 6 months than you'd make in 2 years at that diner." His voice hardened. "But if you walk out that door right now, you're on your own. And the debt doesn't disappear." This is where Riley faced the real villain of her story. Not Damon Hayes, but a system so broken that honesty became a trap. And survival meant surrendering to a world she never wanted to enter. Riley stared at him. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every part of her screamed that this was wrong, that she should run, that nothing good could come from saying yes to a man like Damon Hayes. But the $12,000 was real. The court judgment was real. The eviction notice that would come when she couldn't pay rent, that was real too. "This is the safest option," Damon said, and something in his tone made her believe he actually meant it. "I'm offering you a way out. Take it." Riley closed her eyes. She thought about her father, about the debt collectors who'd come in the night, about the way her mother had cried when they'd lost everything. She thought about the note she'd written in the rain because it was the right thing to do. And now that same honesty had led her here. To this room. To this man. To this impossible choice that wasn't really a choice at all. She opened her eyes and met Damon's gaze. 6 months, she said, her voice steady even though her hands were not. "And then I'm done. The debt is cleared, and I never see you again." Damon nodded once. 6 months. He extended his hand. Riley looked at it for a long moment. Strong, scarred knuckles, a silver ring on his right hand, the edge of that serpent tattoo curling past his wrist. She thought about all the things that hand had probably done, all the violence it had likely delivered. Then she reached out and shook it. His grip was firm, warm, absolute. "Welcome to my world, Riley Brooks," Damon said softly. And Riley realized, with a cold, sinking certainty, that she'd just traded one kind of debt for another, one she might never be able to repay. But what Riley didn't know yet was that the club Damon was taking her to wasn't just dangerous, it was where the real predators came to play. And she was about to become their newest fascination. The club was called Obscura, though there was no sign outside to announce it. Just a black door at the end of an alley in the financial district, with a single doorman who looked like he could break a man in half without breaking a sweat. Martins had driven Riley there directly from Damon's office, the silence in the car thick enough to choke on. "Stay close," Martins said as they approached. "Don't wander. Don't ask questions. And for the love of God, don't stare at anyone." Riley nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. The doorman recognized Martins and stepped aside without a word. The door opened into a narrow corridor lined with dark walls and recessed lighting that cast everything in shadow. Riley could hear music, low, pulsing, the kind that vibrated in your chest. Then they reached the main room, and Riley's breath caught. It was like stepping into another world. The space was massive, clearly occupying multiple buildings that had been gutted and renovated into something that belonged in a film about excess and power. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. The walls were covered in rich, dark fabric that absorbed sound and light. Private booths lined the perimeter, each one curtained off with heavy velvet drapes. In the center, a bar made of black marble stretched the length of the room. Bottles of liquor that probably cost more than Riley's car arranged like art. And the people. Men in suits that fit like they'd been sewn directly onto their bodies. Women in dresses that shimmered like liquid metal. Everyone looked expensive. Everyone looked dangerous. Conversations happened in low murmurs, punctuated by laughter that never quite reached anyone's eyes. Riley felt like she'd been dropped into the ocean wearing concrete shoes. "This way," Martin said, guiding her through the crowd with a hand barely touching her elbow. People moved aside without being asked. Eyes tracked their progress, curious, assessing, cold. They climbed a set of stairs to a second level that overlooked the main floor. Here, the lighting was even dimmer, the atmosphere more intimate, more exclusive. Martins led her to a door guarded by another man in a dark suit, who opened it immediately. Inside was an office, smaller than the one at Damon's building, but no less impressive. Dark wood, leather, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked down onto the club below. And there, standing with his back to the door, watching the crowd like a king surveying his domain, was Damon. He turned as they entered. He'd changed clothes, now wearing a black suit with a crisp white shirt, No tie, the top two buttons undone. He looked like sin and power wrapped in Italian wool. "Leave us," he told Martins. Martins nodded and disappeared, closing the door behind him. Riley stood frozen just inside the threshold, her hands clasped in front of her to hide how badly they were shaking. Damon crossed the room and stopped in front of her. Up close, she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her head spin. "This is Obscura," he said, his voice low and controlled. "This is where you'll work. Tonight you observe. You learn. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't approach anyone unless I tell you to. You stay within my sight at all times." His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Do you understand?" "Yes," Riley managed. "The people who come here," Damon continued, moving to his desk and leaning against it, "are not like anyone you've ever met. They have money. They have power. They have secrets that could destroy governments." He paused, letting that sink in. "Some of them are dangerous. Some of them are predators. And all of them will notice you because you're new. Because you're with me." Riley's stomach twisted. "What exactly do you want me to do? Tonight? Watch. Learn. Tomorrow night you'll start assisting. Serving drinks. Handling requests. Making sure everything runs smoothly." Damon's jaw tightened. "But there are rules you need to understand before you set foot down there." The rules Damon was about to give Riley weren't just guidelines. They were the only things standing between her and the kind of danger that didn't leave survivors. He moved to a cabinet and pulled out a slim black folder, which he handed to her. Riley opened it. Inside was a single page, typewritten, numbered 1 through 10. "Rule 1, Damon said, not waiting for her to read. "What you see here stays here. You don't talk about the club. You don't talk about the clients. You don't mention names, faces, or conversations to anyone. Not your roommate, not your friends. Not the police if they ask." His voice hardened. "Not anyone." Riley swallowed hard. "And if I do?" Damon's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went cold. "Then you become a liability, and I don't keep liabilities around." The threat hung in the air between them, clear as glass. "Rule 2, Damon continued. "No phones allowed on the floor, no cameras, no recording devices of any kind. You'll check your phone at the door every night." He moved closer, and Riley forced herself not to step back. "Rule 3, you don't drink while you're working. You don't take anything offered to you by the clients. Drinks, pills, money, gifts, nothing. You work, you smile, you leave." Riley nodded, her throat tight. "Rule 4, if anyone makes you uncomfortable, you find me immediately. You don't handle it yourself. You don't ignore it. You find me." Damon's voice dropped lower. "Rule 5, if someone tries to take you anywhere, a private room, a car, anywhere outside this building, you refuse. And you find me." "You keep saying to find you," Riley said quietly. "What if you're not here?" "I'm always here when you're here," Damon said. It wasn't a promise. It was a fact. Rule 6, you don't ask questions about anyone's business. You don't get curious. You don't eavesdrop. You're invisible unless someone needs something. He reached out and lifted her chin with one finger, forcing her to meet his eyes. The touch was brief but electric, sending a shock through her entire system. "Rule 7, he said softly, dangerously. "No one touches you without your permission. And if they try, I will personally make sure they regret it." His thumb brushed along her jaw. Just once. Then he released her. "Do you believe me?" Riley's heart hammered. "Yes." "Good." Damon stepped back and the spell broke. "The last 3 rules are in the folder. Read them. Memorize them. Your life might depend on it. Riley looked down at the page, her vision blurring slightly. Rules 8 through 10 were just as stark. No romantic involvement with clients. No stealing. No betraying Damon's trust. This world, Damon said, moving to the windows again, his silhouette dark against the glow of the club below, is not like anything you've known. The people down there have killed for less than what you owe me. They've destroyed lives over insults and slights you wouldn't even notice. He turned back to her. But as long as you're under my protection, they won't touch you. As long as you follow my rules, you're safe. And if I break a rule? Riley asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Damon's expression was unreadable. Then you're on your own. And in this world, that's a death sentence. Riley clutched the folder tighter. 6 months. She just had to survive 6 months. Damon crossed to her and took the folder, setting it aside. Then he did something unexpected. He shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was warm from his body, and it smelled like him. It swallowed her frame. Stay close to me tonight, he said quietly. Don't leave my sight. Don't speak unless I tell you to. Just watch, learn, and remember. His eyes met hers with an intensity that stole her breath. You're mine now. That means something in this world. It means you're protected. But it also means you represent me. Don't make me regret giving you this chance. Riley nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Damon opened the door and gestured for her to follow. As they descended the stairs into the writhing heart of Obscura, Riley felt the weight of 100 eyes turned toward them. Toward her. The girl in the too big jacket, standing next to the most dangerous man in the room. She'd crossed into a new world tonight. A world of wealth and violence and secrets. And there was no going back. What Riley couldn't see from where she stood was the man in the corner booth watching her every move. A man whose interest in her had nothing to do with Damon's protection, and everything to do with finding his weakness. Riley had been working at Obscura for 2 weeks when everything changed. She'd learned the rhythm of the place, the ebb and flow of power, the unspoken hierarchies, the way certain men commanded silence when they entered a room. She'd learned to move like a ghost, refilling glasses before they were empty, clearing tables without being noticed, keeping her eyes down and her mouth shut. She'd learned which clients tipped well and which ones looked at her like she was something they could buy. And she'd learned that Damon Hayes was always watching. Even when he was in meetings behind closed doors, even when he was on the other side of the room surrounded by men in expensive suits, she could feel his attention on her like a physical touch. He'd told her to stay in his sight, and she had. But what unnerved her more was that he seemed to track her every movement, every interaction, every breath. Riley thought she was learning how to survive in Damon's world. She didn't realize she was being studied, not just by him, but by someone far more dangerous. Tonight the club was busier than usual. Some kind of gathering. Damon had called it a summit, but offered no other details. Men Riley had never seen before filled the private booths, their conversations intense and their security details obvious. The tension in the air was different, sharper, more dangerous. Riley carried a tray of crystal glasses filled with amber liquid toward one of the booths on the upper level. She kept her steps measured, her expression neutral, exactly as Damon had taught her. As she set the glasses down, she felt it, that prickling awareness that came from being watched. She glanced up. Across the room, in a booth near the far corner, a man was staring at her. Not the casual assessment she'd grown used to, but something more focused, more calculating. He was younger than most of Damon's associates, maybe early 30s, with sharp features and pale eyes that reflected the low lighting like a predator's. His suit was gray, expensive, and he wore it with the kind of ease that suggested violence in tailored clothing. Their eyes met for just a second. Then he smiled, Slow, cold, and deeply unsettling. Riley looked away quickly, her heart rate spiking. She finished distributing the drinks and retreated toward the bar, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. She found Martins near the stairs, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. "Who's the man in the gray suit?" she asked quietly. "Corner booth, upper level." Martins's expression darkened immediately. His hand went to the small earpiece he wore. "Where exactly?" "Southeast corner." He was staring at— "Stay here," Martins ordered. Then he was moving, cutting through the crowd with purpose. What happened in the next 60 seconds would determine whether Riley walked out of Obscura alive, or became a message written in blood. Riley pressed herself against the bar, her hands shaking. She watched Martins climb the stairs and speak urgently into his earpiece. 30 seconds later, Damon emerged from his office, his expression thunderous. His eyes found Riley first, a quick assessment to confirm she was safe. Then his gaze shifted to the corner booth, and Riley saw something she'd never seen before cross his face. Fear. Not for himself. For her. Damon moved down the stairs with controlled speed, Martins falling in beside him. 2 more security personnel materialized from the shadows, their hands inside their jackets where weapons were surely holstered. The music seemed to dim, or maybe it was just Riley's perception narrowing to this single moment. The man in the gray suit stood as Damon approached. He was tall, lean, with the kind of casual arrogance that came from never having faced real consequences. He smiled wider as Damon stopped 3 feet away. "Hayes," the man said, his voice carrying just enough to reach Riley at the bar. "I was wondering when you'd notice me." "Constantine." Damon's voice was ice. "You're not welcome here." The name sent a chill through every person within earshot. Konstantin Volkov, the heir to a criminal empire that made Damon's operation look like a charity. And he'd just set his sights on Riley. "Not welcome?" Konstantin laughed, the sound sharp and mirthless. "I'm hurt. I came all this way to see your establishment and to meet your new acquisition." His pale eyes slid past Damon to lock onto Riley again. "She's exquisite. Where did you find such an innocent thing?" Damon moved, subtly but deliberately, blocking Konstantin's line of sight to Riley. "She's under my protection. That makes her untouchable." "Everything's touchable," Konstantin said softly. "For the right price." He tilted his head, studying Damon with predatory interest. "Or perhaps we could discuss a trade. I have something you want, the shipment that went missing last month. I know where it is." Riley's blood ran cold. She shouldn't be hearing this. This was exactly the kind of conversation that could get her killed just for being in the room. "Martins," Damon said without turning. "Escort Mr. Volkov out. Inform every venue from here to the waterfront that he's barred. Permanently." Konstantin's smile never wavered, but something vicious flashed in his eyes. "You're making a mistake, Hayes. I came here as a courtesy, to warn you that things are changing. The old agreements, the territories you think you control, they're not as secure as you believe." He straightened his cuffs. "And that girl? She's a weakness. Everyone can see it." Damon's jaw tightened, the only visible reaction. But Riley saw the way his hands flexed at his sides, saw the muscle tick in his neck that suggested he was using every ounce of control not to respond with violence. "Leave," Damon said, his voice deadly quiet. "While you still can." For a moment, Riley thought Konstantin would push further. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every patron had gone silent, every conversation suspended. This was the kind of confrontation that could end in bloodshed, and everyone knew it. Then Konstantin laughed again, that same cold, empty sound. "As you wish." But I'll be seeing you again soon, Hayes. And your little project. His eyes found Riley one last time, and the promise in them made her skin crawl. Very soon. Martins and 2 other security guards flanked Constantine, hands visible now inside their jackets. They escorted him toward the exit, the crowd parting like water. The moment the door closed behind him, the tension broke, and conversations resumed. Carefully, quietly, as if everyone was afraid to acknowledge what they'd just witnessed. Damon turned and walked directly to Riley. His face was a mask, but his eyes... Riley had never seen him look like that. Furious and something else. Something that looked almost like worry. "Upstairs," he said. "Now." Riley followed Damon back to his office, her heart hammering with a terrifying realization. She'd just become the center of a war she didn't understand. And in Damon's world, that meant she'd become the most valuable and most vulnerable piece on the board. Riley followed him up the stairs, her legs trembling. Other patrons averted their eyes as they passed. The unspoken rule was clear. Whatever had just happened, it was better not to have seen it. Back in the office, Damon closed the door and moved immediately to the windows, his back to her. His shoulders were rigid, hands clenched at his sides. Riley stood uncertainly near the door, not sure if she should speak or wait. "Konstantin Volkov," Damon said finally, his voice tight, "is the son of Viktor Volkov. They run operations out of the North Side, trafficking, weapons, extortion. They're vicious, territorial, and they've been trying to expand into my territory for the past year." He turned to face her. "He came here tonight specifically to see you, to send me a message." "What message?" Riley's voice came out smaller than she intended. "That you're a liability." Damon crossed to his desk and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey from a crystal decanter. He drank it in one swallow. "That I've shown weakness by protecting someone who can't protect themselves." Riley's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "This isn't your fault," Damon cut her off, his voice sharp. Then softer. "This is mine. I should have known bringing you here would draw attention." He set the glass down harder than necessary. "Constantine's right about one thing. You're a target now. Everyone who wants to hurt me will see you as the easiest way to do it." "Then let me go," Riley said quickly. "I'll disappear. I'll leave the city. You can forget about the debt." "No!" The word was absolute. Damon moved toward her with that same predatory grace, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "You're under my protection. That doesn't end because someone threatens you. It ends when I say it ends." His jaw clenched. "But we need to change the arrangement." "What do you mean?" "You can't go home tonight. Constantine will have people watching your apartment. He'll know your routine, your friends, everywhere you go." Damon's eyes searched her face. "You're going to stay here, in the building. I have a secure apartment upstairs. You'll live there until this situation is resolved." Riley opened her mouth to argue, but the words died on her lips. Because she realized in that moment that Damon wasn't asking. He was telling her that she'd just lost what little freedom she had left. And they both knew it was the only way to keep her alive. Riley's mind reeled. "For how long?" "As long as it takes." Damon pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. "Martins will pack up your apartment tonight. Anything you need, make a list. You won't be going back there." "Damon, I can't just..." "Yes, you can." His voice softened marginally, but the steel underneath remained. "Riley, I've seen what the Volkovs do to people they want to use as leverage. I've seen the bodies. I've cleaned up the aftermath." He stepped closer, and Riley saw something raw flicker in his expression. "I won't let that happen to you." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. Riley wasn't sure she was ready to understand. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care? I'm just some girl who scratched your car." Damon was quiet for a long moment. His eyes never left hers, and in them, Riley saw something that looked almost like vulnerability, there and gone in a heartbeat. "Because you left a note," he said finally. "Because in a world where everyone lies, where everyone takes what they can and runs, you stayed. You took responsibility." His voice dropped lower. "Because you remind me that integrity still exists. And I'm not letting Konstantin Volkov destroy that just to get to me." Riley's breath caught. The intensity in his gaze was overwhelming, suffocating, and something else entirely. Something that made her pulse race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "The apartment upstairs is secure," Damon continued, breaking the moment as he moved back to his desk. "Bulletproof windows, reinforced door, panic button that connects directly to my phone. You'll have everything you need, but you don't leave without an escort. You don't go anywhere without telling me first." He looked up, his expression hardening again. "And you follow every rule I give you without question. Your life depends on it now." Riley nodded numbly. This had all happened so fast. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a waitress scraping by on tips and instant ramen. Now she was living in a fortress, hiding from criminals who saw her as a weapon to be used against the man who'd claimed her as his responsibility. "There's something else," Damon said, his tone shifting to something darker. "Konstantin knows your face now. He knows you're connected to me. Even after this is over, even after you've paid your debt." He paused, and Riley saw the weight of what he was about to say settle over him. "You'll never be completely safe. Not from him. Not from others like him." The implications crashed over Riley like a wave. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't something she could walk away from in 6 months and forget. By entering Damon's world, by catching Konstantin Volkov's attention, she'd permanently altered the trajectory of her life. "So what do I do?" Riley asked, her voice breaking slightly. Damon's expression softened. Just barely. Just enough for her to see the man beneath the armor. "You survive. You learn. You get stronger." He moved toward her again. And this time when he reached out, his hand cupped her jaw gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. "And you trust that I will do everything in my power to keep you alive." What neither of them knew was that Konstantin wasn't the only one watching. And the real threat wasn't coming from outside Obscura's walls. It was already inside, wearing a friendly face, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Riley leaned into his touch before she could stop herself, seeking the warmth and solidity of him in a moment when everything else felt like it was crumbling. Damon's eyes darkened, and for a heartbeat, Riley thought he might close the distance between them entirely. Then his phone buzzed, and the spell broke. Damon pulled back, checking the message. His expression turned grim. "Martins has your apartment secured. He's packing your essentials now." He looked at Riley. "I'll have someone take you upstairs. Get settled. Try to rest. Tomorrow we figure out our next move." "And Konstantin?" "Let me worry about Konstantin," Damon said, his voice returning to that cold, controlled tone she'd heard him use with enemies. "You worry about staying alive." As if that was simple. As if Riley hadn't just realized that staying alive in Damon Hayes' world meant surrendering pieces of herself she'd never get back. And as she followed a security guard out of the office and up another flight of stairs to an apartment she'd never asked for, Riley understood with perfect clarity that the $12,000 debt had been nothing. The real cost of her honesty was something far more expensive. Her freedom, her safety, and maybe, eventually, her heart. The apartment was beautiful in a sterile, untouchable way. But what Riley would discover hidden in its walls would reveal that Damon's protection came with secrets of its own. Secrets that would make her question everything she thought she knew about the man who'd claimed her. Damon descended the stairs with Martins at his side, his movements controlled but fast. Riley watched as he crossed the floor and stopped at the booth where the man in gray sat. The conversation was brief, tense, too quiet to hear over the music. The man in gray never stopped smiling. Then Damon turned and walked back toward Riley, his jaw set like granite. He reached her in seconds, his hand closing around her wrist. Not rough, but firm. "Come with me. Now." He pulled her toward the back hallway, Martins falling into step behind them. They bypassed his office and went to a smaller room Riley had never been in, a security center, walls covered in monitors showing every angle of the club. Damon released her wrist and turned to Martins. "When did he arrive?" 20 minutes ago, Martins said, pulling up footage on one of the screens. "Came in with 2 men, took the corner booth. He's been watching her since she came upstairs with the drinks." "Who is he?" Riley asked, her voice shaking. Damon's hands flexed at his sides, the only outward sign of the fury Riley could feel radiating off him. "Caleb Vance." The name meant nothing to Riley, but Martins swore under his breath. "He's my competitor," Damon said, his voice dangerously quiet. "We've been at war for 3 years over territory, distribution, influence. He's tried twice to kill me. I've returned the favor." Damon turned to face her fully, and Riley saw something raw in his eyes. "He's here tonight because he was invited. Neutral ground. Temporary truce for the summit. But the fact that he's here, looking at you..." His jaw clenched. "That's not a coincidence." Riley's blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "It means he's figured out what took me 2 seconds to realize when I found your note," Damon said. "That you're different. That you matter." He stepped closer, and Riley's back hit the wall. "In my world, anything that matters is a weakness. Anything that matters can be used as leverage." "I don't matter to you," Riley whispered. I'm just paying off a debt." Damon's eyes searched hers, and for a moment, Riley saw something vulnerable flash across his face. Then it was gone. Locked away behind that impenetrable mask. "Whether you matter or not is irrelevant," he said quietly. "What matters is that Caleb thinks you do. He's seen you by my side for 2 weeks. He's seen me watch you. He's seen me give you my jacket, keep you close, protect you." Damon's voice dropped lower. "He's found a crack in my armor, Riley. And men like Caleb don't hesitate to exploit those cracks." Riley's legs felt weak. "So what happens now?" Damon turned back to Martins, his entire demeanor shifting from protective to tactical. "I want 2 men on her at all times. She doesn't go anywhere, not the bathroom, not the storage room, nowhere, without security. I want cameras on every exit, every alley, every approach to this building." "Already done," Martin said. "Double it," Damon ordered. "And I want to know every move Caleb makes. Every phone call, every meeting, every person he talks to. If he breathes wrong, I want to know about it." But Damon's precautions wouldn't be enough. Caleb was already 3 steps ahead. "Boss," Martin said carefully. "If Caleb's already noticed her, pulling back might be smarter. Send her home for a few weeks. Let this blow over." "No," Damon said sharply. His eyes cut to Riley. "If I send her home, she's exposed. She's alone. She's vulnerable." He moved closer to Martins, his voice dropping to something deadly. "As long as she's here, she's protected. As long as she's in my sight, Caleb knows that touching her means war. Real war. The kind that ends with one of us dead." Martins nodded slowly. "Understood." Damon scrubbed a hand over his face. the gesture betraying exhaustion Riley had never seen before. When he looked at her again, his expression was almost apologetic. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You didn't sign up for this." Riley's laugh was bitter, broken. "I scratched your car. Now I'm in the middle of a gang war. I'm not sure what I signed up for anymore." "A debt," Damon said. "Just a debt. That's what this was supposed to be." He stepped closer, and Riley caught that scent of his cologne again, dark and intoxicating. "But Caleb's changed the game, and until I can neutralize him, you're in danger." "How long?" Riley asked. "How long until I'm safe again?" Damon's expression was answer enough. Maybe never. "I need you to trust me," he said. "I know you have no reason to. I know you're terrified, but I will not let him hurt you. Do you understand? Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do." His hand came up, hesitated, then settled on her shoulder, warm and solid. "You're under my protection, and I keep what's mine safe." There was that word again, mine. It should have made Riley feel trapped, owned, controlled. Instead, standing in that small room with monitors showing 100 different angles of danger, it made her feel something else entirely. Anchored, protected, claimed. And that terrified her more than Caleb Vance ever could. "Okay," she whispered. "I trust you. If this moment hit you the way it hit me while writing it, take a second to subscribe. It tells me you want more stories like this, and it truly helps me keep making them. Comment where you're watching from, and tell me, do you think Riley should trust Damon? Or is she falling for a manipulator who's just as dangerous as Caleb? Because what she's about to discover will make you question whose side you're really on." Damon's fingers tightened on her shoulder for just a moment. Then he released her and turned back to Martin's. "Get her out of here through the back exit. Take her to the penthouse. I'll meet you there in an hour." "The penthouse?" Riley's voice cracked. "Why?" "Because my penthouse is a fortress," Damon said, already moving toward the door. "And until I deal with Caleb, that's where you're staying." He was gone before Riley could protest, leaving her alone with Martins and the monitors showing Caleb Vance still sitting in his booth, smiling like he'd already won. What Riley didn't know was that Caleb's smile wasn't about victory. It was about what he was planning to reveal. Riley hadn't been back to Rosie's in 3 days. Damon had insisted she stay away, but she'd needed clothes, needed to check on her apartment, needed, if she was being honest, a single hour that felt normal. Martins had driven her, waiting in the car outside while she ran upstairs to grab a bag. She'd promised to be quick, but when she came back down, she saw the diner lights on across the street and felt a pull she couldn't resist. Just 5 minutes, just to see Chloe, to remind herself that her old life still existed somewhere beneath the weight of Damon's world. Martins had made a phone call, his expression stern, but he'd nodded. 5 minutes. I'll be right here." Those 5 minutes would become the most dangerous decision of her life. Riley crossed the street, the bell above the door chiming as she pushed inside. The familiar smell of coffee and frying eggs wrapped around her like a blanket. Chloe looked up from behind the counter, her face breaking into a relieved grin. "Oh my God, you're alive," Chloe said, coming around to hug her. "I thought he'd murdered you and dumped your body in the river." "Not yet," Riley said, trying to smile. But it felt wrong on her face. Forced. "You look exhausted," Chloe said, studying her. "And you're wearing clothes I've never seen before. Are those designer jeans?" Riley glanced down. They were. Damon had sent an entire wardrobe to wherever he'd been keeping her the past few days. "It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated lately." Chloe pulled her toward a booth. "Sit. Talk to me. 5 minutes before your scary bodyguard drags you back." Riley slid into the booth, and for just a moment, it felt like before. Like she was just a waitress on a break, gossiping with her friend about bad tips and difficult customers. But then the bell chimed again, and Riley's blood went cold. The man in the gray suit walked in. Caleb Vance looked different in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the diner. Less polished. More predatory. His pale eyes found Riley immediately, and that same cold smile spread across his face. "Riley Brooks," he said, his voice smooth, almost pleasant. What a coincidence. But it wasn't a coincidence, and what Caleb was about to tell her would shatter everything she thought she knew. Chloe tensed beside her. Riley's hand went to her phone in her pocket, but Caleb was already sliding into the booth across from them, uninvited. "You should leave," Riley said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Now." "I just want to talk," Caleb said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. 5 minutes, that's all." His smile widened. "Your friend outside won't even know I'm here." "I came in through the kitchen." Riley's heart hammered. "What do you want?" "To give you some advice," Caleb said, leaning back like he owned the place. "Woman to woman. Well," he glanced at Chloe. "Women. Plural." "I'm calling the cops," Chloe said, reaching for her phone. "Please don't," Caleb said, and something in his tone made Chloe freeze. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to help." His eyes locked onto Riley's. "Do you know what Damon Hayes is, Riley? What he really does?" "I know enough," Riley said. "Do you?" Caleb tilted his head. "Do you know how many people he's killed? Do you know about the bodies they never found? The families he's destroyed?" He leaned forward, and Riley caught the scent of expensive cologne and something sharper. Danger. "He's not protecting you, sweetheart. He's using you. You don't know anything about—" "I know everything," Caleb interrupted. "I know he found your note and was intrigued by your honesty. I know he's kept you close, dressed you up, paraded you around Obscura like a prize." His voice dropped lower. "I also know he has a history with your family. Did he tell you that?" Riley's breath caught. "What?" The truth Caleb was about to reveal would make Riley question everything, and it would put her in more danger than she could imagine. Caleb's smile turned sharp. "Oh, he didn't mention it. How interesting." He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and turned the screen toward her. It was a photo, old, grainy, clearly from a newspaper archive. The headline read, "Local family nearly destroyed by loan sharks." And there, in the photo beneath it, was a younger version of her father, haggard, broken. 8 years ago, Caleb said quietly, "Your father took out a loan from some very bad people. When he couldn't pay, they came for him. Your mother, you." He paused, letting that sink in. Damon Hayes was there that night, Riley. He was part of the crew that came to collect. The room spun. Riley gripped the edge of the table. "You're lying." "Am I?" Caleb pocketed his phone. "Ask him. Ask him where he was 8 years ago. Ask him if he remembers the Brooks family." He stood, straightening his jacket. "Damon Hayes is a killer and a monster, and whatever he's told you about protection is a lie. He's the reason your family almost fell apart. And now he's got his hooks in you, and you're too blind to see it." "Get out," Riley whispered, tears burning her eyes. Caleb leaned down, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. "I can protect you from him. I can get you out. But you need to decide whose side you're on before it's too late." He pulled out a card and set it on the table. "Call me when you're ready to see the truth." Then he was gone, disappearing through the kitchen the same way he'd come. Riley thought she knew who the monster was. She was about to discover she'd been wrong about everything. Riley sat frozen, staring at the card. Chloe grabbed her hand. Riley, you can't believe him. He's messing with you. The door slammed open. Martin stormed in, his gun visible beneath his jacket, eyes wild. Where is he? Gone, Riley said numbly. Through the kitchen. Martin swore viciously and spoke rapidly into his earpiece. We've got a breach. Vance made contact. I need backup at the diner. Now. 2 minutes later, Damon's black SUV screeched to a stop outside. He was out before it fully stopped, moving through the door like a storm. His eyes found Riley, scanned her for injuries, then landed on Martin's. What happened? Vance was here, Martin said. He bypassed me, came through the back, talked to her for maybe 3 minutes before I realized. Damon's jaw clenched so hard Riley heard his teeth grind. Then he crossed to the booth and slid in beside her, his body angled to shield her from the door. What did he say? Riley's hands were shaking. She looked at Damon, really looked at him, at the man who'd tracked her down over a scratched car, who'd forced her into his world, who'd promised protection. And she saw something in his eyes she'd never noticed before. Guilt. He said you were there, Riley whispered. 8 years ago. When men came to collect my father's debt, he said you were part of it. What Damon said next would either save Riley's trust or destroy it completely. Damon didn't deny it. He didn't look away. He just held her gaze, and in that silence, Riley got her answer. Oh my God, she breathed. It's true. Riley, you knew. Her voice broke. You knew who I was. You knew about my family this whole time. Yes, Damon said quietly. The single word fell between them like a blade. I knew. Riley stood so fast the booth seat scraped backward. You used me. I protected you, Damon said, standing too. That night, 8 years ago, I was the one who stopped them from hurting your family. I was the one who made sure your father only lost money, not his life. His voice was raw, desperate. I've been protecting you since before you even knew my name. By forcing me to work for you? Riley's laugh was broken. By dragging me into your war with Caleb? That's protection? It's the only kind I know how to give, Damon said. His hands flexed at his sides, like he wanted to reach for her but knew he couldn't. And right now, Caleb knowing your name, knowing your face, that makes you a target, whether you're in my world or not. Riley grabbed her bag from the booth. I need to think. You need to come with me, Damon said firmly. Right now. Caleb didn't come here to talk. He came here to plant seeds of doubt so you'd be easier to take when he makes his move. Maybe I should let him, Riley shot back. Something dangerous flashed in Damon's eyes. He will kill you, Riley. Not quickly, not cleanly. He'll use you to hurt me, and when he's done, he'll discard you like trash. He stepped closer, and Riley's back hit the booth. I'm not the good guy in this story. I've never pretended to be, but I'm the only thing standing between you and a very painful death. Riley's chest heaved. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream, but she looked past Damon, through the diner window, and saw the street. Empty. Dark. Full of places where Caleb Vance could be waiting. The penthouse, Damon said quietly. Tonight. Full security. No one gets in. No one gets out. You'll be safe there. I don't want to be your prisoner, Riley whispered. You're not my prisoner, Damon said, and something in his voice cracked. You're mine to protect. There's a difference. Riley was about to make a choice that would seal her fate, but she had no idea how that choice had already been made for her. Riley closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Caleb's smile haunted her. His words echoed. Call me when you're ready to see the truth. She opened her eyes and met Damon's gaze. If I do this, if I go with you, I want the truth. All of it. About my family. About that night. About why you really tracked me down. Damon nodded once. You'll have it. Tonight, Riley insisted. Tonight, Damon agreed. He extended his hand. Riley looked at it for a long moment, then placed hers in his. His grip was warm, solid, absolute. And as he led her out of the diner toward the waiting SUV, Riley realized she'd just made a choice. Maybe the wrong one. Maybe the only one she had. But she'd made it nonetheless. What Riley was about to overhear would prove Caleb right, and put her life in even greater danger. Damon's penthouse was on the 42nd floor of a building that looked like it had been carved from black glass and steel. The elevator required a keycard and a fingerprint scan. The hallway leading to his door had cameras every 10 feet. When they finally stepped inside, Riley understood what he'd meant by fortress. The space was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked like it cost more than her childhood home, art on the walls that belonged in museums. But what struck her most were the details that betrayed the man who lived here. The security panel by the door with more buttons than she could count. The reinforced windows that were probably bulletproof. The way every sightline had been carefully considered, every blind spot eliminated. This wasn't a home. It was a stronghold. Your room is down that hall, Damon said, gesturing to the left. Second door. Bathrooms attached. There are clothes in the closet that should fit. He moved to the security panel and entered a code. Don't try to leave. The elevator won't work without my authorization, and the stairwell doors are alarmed. So I am a prisoner, Riley said quietly. Damon turned to face her, and for a moment his mask slipped. She saw exhaustion there, and something that looked almost like regret. You're protected. There's a difference. You keep saying that, Riley said. I'm not sure I believe it anymore. He didn't answer, just watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes until Riley couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her bag and walked down the hall to the room he'd indicated, closing the door firmly behind her. The bedroom was larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed with crisp white linens. A sitting area with a leather chair and a view that made her dizzy. The closet was indeed stocked with clothes. Her size, her style. Like someone had studied her and replicated her wardrobe with expensive versions. It should have felt like luxury. Instead, it felt like a gilded cage. Riley sat on the edge of the bed and put her face in her hands. Everything Caleb had said kept replaying in her mind. He was there that night. He's using you. He's a killer and a monster. And Damon hadn't denied any of it. He'd just said he was protecting her, like that erased everything else. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Hours passed. Riley tried to sleep but couldn't. She paced the room, tested the window, sealed tight, and finally cracked the door to listen to the sounds of the penthouse. Voices drifted from somewhere down the hall. Damon's, low and controlled. Martins's, responding. Riley knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, but she needed to understand. Needed to know if Caleb was right, if she was just a pawn in whatever game these men were playing. She crept down the hallway, staying close to the wall, until she could hear them clearly. They were in Damon's office. She could see the light spilling from the partially open door. Can't keep this up forever, Martins was saying. Caleb's already made contact. He'll make a move soon. I know, Damon said, his voice cold. Calculated. Nothing like the way he'd spoken to her earlier. That's why we need to be ready. And the girl? Martins asked. What do we do with her when this is over? Silence. Riley's heart pounded so hard she thought they might hear it. We'll deal with that when the time comes, Damon said finally. Right now, she's useful. Caleb thinks she matters to me, which means he'll focus on her. That gives us an advantage. So she's bait, Martin said. Another pause. Then, essentially. Those words, essentially bait, were about to trigger a chain of events that would nearly cost Riley her life. The word hit Riley like a physical blow. Bait. Not protected, not cared for. Just a tool to be used and discarded when she was no longer useful. Caleb had been right. Damon was using her. Riley backed away from the door, her vision blurring with tears. She returned to her room on shaking legs and closed the door as quietly as possible. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't get enough air. All of it. The protection, the promises, the jacket draped over her shoulders. It had all been a lie. A manipulation to keep her compliant while he used her as bait in his war with Caleb. She looked at the window again. 42 floors up. No way out there. But there had to be something. Some way to escape before Damon's plan, whatever it was, got her killed. Riley moved to the closet and pulled on the darkest clothes she could find. Jeans, a black sweater, sneakers. She grabbed her phone and the cash she'd stashed in her bag. Then she crept back into the hallway. The penthouse was quiet now. Damon and Martins must have finished their conversation. She could see light under what she assumed was Damon's bedroom door at the far end of the hall. The office was dark. Riley made her way to the front door, her heart hammering. The security panel glowed red. Locked. But beneath it was a manual override, the kind required by fire code. She'd noticed it earlier when Damon had entered his code. Her fingers trembled as she flipped open the panel cover. Inside were wires, circuits, a release mechanism. She'd never done anything like this before, but desperation made her bold. She pressed the manual release. An alarm should have sounded, but nothing happened. Maybe Damon had disabled it, confident that the elevator wouldn't work without his authorization. The deadbolt clicked open. Riley thought she was escaping to safety. She was running straight into Caleb's trap. Riley didn't let herself think. She pulled the door open and slipped into the hallway, closing it softly behind her. The elevator was just 10 feet away. She pressed the button, praying it would work, that somehow. The doors opened immediately. Riley stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. The elevator descended smoothly, and with each floor that passed, she felt something loosen in her chest. She'd done it. She was getting out. The doors opened onto the marble lobby. A security guard looked up from his desk, surprised. "Miss?" he called. "Wait!" But Riley was already running, pushing through the revolving door and out onto the street. The night air hit her like a slap, cold and sharp. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to get away from Damon, from his lies, from the trap he'd built around her. She made it half a block before she realized her mistake. The street was too quiet, too empty. And there, parked at the corner with its engine running, was a black sedan. The doors opened. 3 men stepped out, moving with the practiced coordination of professionals. Riley turned to run back toward the building, but there were more behind her. She was surrounded. "Don't scream," one of them said, his voice almost polite. "Mr. Vance would like a word." Riley's phone buzzed in her pocket. Probably Damon, realizing she was gone. But before she could reach for it, rough hands grabbed her arms. A cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, chemical sweet and suffocating. She tried to fight, tried to scream, but the world was already fading. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the penthouse building towering above her. All those windows like eyes, and Damon's floor lit up like a beacon she'd been too foolish to stay close to. What Riley didn't know was that the words she'd overheard weren't the full conversation, and the truth would be far more complicated than she realized. Then there was nothing but darkness and the distant sound of a car door slamming shut. Riley woke to the smell of rust and oil. Her head throbbed, and her mouth tasted like chemicals. She tried to move and realized her hands were zip-tied behind her back, secured to a metal chair. Panic flooded her system, sharp and immediate. She forced her eyes open. She was in a warehouse, massive, abandoned, with broken windows high above, letting in thin streams of moonlight. Shipping containers lined the walls like giant metal tombs. The concrete floor was stained with things Riley didn't want to identify. "Ah, you're awake," a voice said. "Good. I'd hate for you to miss this." Caleb Vance stepped into view, still wearing that gray suit, still smiling that cold smile. He looked pristine despite their surroundings, like the decay and violence couldn't touch him. "Where am I?" Riley's voice came out hoarse. "Somewhere private," Caleb said, crouching in front of her. "Somewhere Damon will have to work very hard to find, though I have no doubt he's trying." He tilted his head, studying her like she was an interesting specimen. "You ran from him. That was smart, or very stupid. I haven't decided which yet." "Let me go," Riley said, hating how her voice shook. "I'm nobody. I don't matter to him. You heard him yourself. I'm just bait." "Oh, I'm counting on that," Caleb said. "See, Damon's weakness has always been his arrogance. He thinks he's untouchable, that his fortress is impenetrable, that his enemies can't reach the things he values." His smile widened. "But you got out so easily, didn't you? Almost like someone wanted you to." What Caleb revealed next would make Riley realize she'd been playing a game where everyone knew the rules except her. Riley's blood went cold. You planned this." "I disabled his security system remotely the moment I left the diner," Caleb said, standing. "Made sure the elevator would work, the alarms wouldn't sound. All you had to do was run." He walked to a metal table against the wall and picked up a gun, checking the chamber with practiced ease. "And you did. Right into my arms." "He'll kill you for this," Riley whispered. "He'll certainly try," Caleb agreed. "That's the point. I've been trying to draw Damon into a real confrontation for months, but he's too careful, too controlled. He never makes mistakes." He turned back to her. "But then you scratched his car. You left that note. And suddenly, the untouchable Damon Hayes had something to lose." The sound of vehicles outside made them both freeze. Engines cut, doors slammed. Voices shouted orders. Caleb's smile turned predatory. "Right on schedule." The confrontation Riley was about to witness would reveal the truth about who Damon really was, and what she actually meant to him. The warehouse doors exploded inward with a deafening crash. Armed men poured through, Damon's men, dressed in black, weapons raised. They fanned out with military precision, clearing corners, shouting "Clear!" as they secured the space. And then Damon walked in. He looked like death incarnate. His shirt was torn, blood on his knuckles, his face a mask of controlled rage that made Riley's breath catch. His eyes swept the warehouse until they found her, and something in his expression cracked. Relief and fury colliding. "Let her go, Caleb," Damon said, his voice deadly quiet. "Or what?" Caleb called back. He was behind Riley now, his hand on her shoulder, the gun held loosely at his side. "You'll shoot me? With your men surrounding us? In front of her?" He laughed. "We both know you won't risk hitting her." Damon moved closer, his men flanking him, weapons trained on Caleb. "This is between us. Let her go, and we'll settle it. Just us." "But she's the whole point," Caleb said. "You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about territory or money. This is about you finally caring about something. Someone. His grip on Riley's shoulder tightened. Tell me, Damon, does she know? Does she know why you really tracked her down? Caleb, does she know you were there 8 years ago? Caleb's voice rose, theatrical. When her father was beaten within an inch of his life, when her mother begged on her knees, when little Riley Brooks watched from the stairs, crying. Riley's vision blurred. She remembered that night. The terror, the violence, the men in dark clothes. She'd been 14, and she'd never forgotten the sound of her father's screams. I was there, Damon said, his voice raw. He looked at Riley and she saw something break behind his eyes. I was there. Caleb's right. Finally, some honesty, Caleb said. Tell her the rest, Damon. Tell her what you did. What Damon confessed next would change everything Riley thought she knew. About him, about that night, and about why he'd really brought her into his world. Damon's jaw clenched. I was the one who stopped them. My crew. They were going to kill your father, your mother, maybe you. His voice dropped to something broken. I was young, new to the business, but I had enough pull to call it off. I told them your family was off limits. I made sure your father only lost money, not his life. Riley stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Why? Because I saw you, Damon said simply. Standing on those stairs in your pajamas, terrified, and I thought. He swallowed hard. I thought this is what we've become. This is what I'm becoming. And I wouldn't, let them hurt a child. How noble, Caleb sneered. And when she left that note on your car, you recognized her name. You remembered. So you tracked her down, not because of the scratch, but because you wanted to ease your conscience. You wanted to save her again to make up for that night. Yes, Damon said, his eyes never leaving Riley's. I remembered her. I remembered that night. And when I saw her note, I saw a chance to. His voice cracked. To protect her the way I should have protected her family. By forcing her into your world? Caleb laughed. By making her bait? I never wanted her to be bait, Damon said, anger flashing. I wanted her close so I could keep her safe. From you. From everyone. And yet here we are, Caleb said. He raised the gun, pressing it to Riley's temple. Last chance, Damon. Tell me where you've hidden the shipment. Or I pull this trigger. What happened next would be decided in seconds, and it would prove exactly who the real monster was. Everything happened at once. Damon moved, drawing his weapon. Caleb's men appeared from behind the shipping containers, guns raised. Martins shouted a warning. The warehouse erupted into chaos, gunfire, shouting, the sharp crack of bullets hitting metal. Damon was a blur of motion, taking down 2 of Caleb's men before they could fire. He moved toward Riley with singular focus, his body a shield, taking hits meant for her. Caleb fired. The shot went wide as Martins tackled him from the side. They went down hard, the guns skittering across the concrete. Riley screamed, struggling against her restraints as the battle raged around her. Then Damon was there, cutting through her zip ties with a knife, pulling her up and behind him. Stay behind me, he ordered, his voice steel. Riley clutched the back of his shirt as he advanced on Caleb. Martins had him pinned, but Caleb was fighting like a cornered animal. Damon grabbed him by the collar and hauled him up, slamming him against a shipping container. You want to know what she means to me? Damon said, his voice raw. She's the only good thing I've seen in 8 years. She's proof that people can still be honest in a world of lies. She's. His voice broke. She's mine to protect, and I failed. He drew back his fist and hit Caleb hard enough that Riley heard bone crack. Once. Twice. again. Martins finally pulled him back as Caleb collapsed, unconscious and bleeding. The truth Riley had been searching for was finally clear, but now she had to decide if she could live in Damon's dangerous world. The warehouse went silent except for heavy breathing and the distant wail of sirens. Damon turned to Riley, and she saw the blood on him. His arm, his side, his face. He'd taken bullets meant for her. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I'm fine," he said, though he swayed slightly. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Riley shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Damon reached for her, hesitated, then pulled her against his chest. She felt his heart hammering, felt him shaking with adrenaline and relief. "I'm sorry," he said into her hair. "For everything. For that night. For dragging you into this. For making you think you were just bait." His arms tightened around her. "You were never bait. You were always—" He didn't finish, just held her as the sirens grew closer and his men secured the scene and Caleb was dragged away in zip ties. And Riley, despite everything, held him back. What Riley chose next would define the rest of her life, and she was about to discover that the dangerous choice might be the right one after all. 6 months later, Riley stood in the kitchen of a house she never thought she'd see. Not a penthouse, not a fortress, just a house. White clapboard, a front porch, a yard with actual grass. It sat on the edge of the city where the noise faded and the air smelled clean. Damon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. The motion was easy now, familiar. His touch no longer made her flinch with fear, but lean back with trust. "You're thinking too loud," he murmured. Riley smiled, covering his hands with hers. "I'm thinking about how strange this is. 6 months ago, I was terrified of you." "You should have been," Damon said quietly. "I was terrifying." "Was?" Riley turned in his arms to face him. The man looking back at her was different from the one who'd walked into Rosie's diner with an entourage of armed men. The hard edges were still there. Probably always would be, but they'd softened somehow. Or maybe she'd just learned to see past them. "I'm retired," Damon said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Officially. Martins runs the clubs now. I consult occasionally, but mostly—" He gestured around the kitchen, at the coffee maker and the fruit bowl and the utter normalcy of it all. "I'm just a guy with a mortgage." "A guy with a mortgage who still has a panic room in the basement," Riley pointed out. "Old habits," Damon said with a shrug. "Besides, it makes me feel better knowing it's there, just in case. There would always be a just in case with Damon." Riley had accepted that. She'd also accepted that the man who'd tracked her down over a scratched car had been protecting her long before she ever knew his name. That his obsession with her safety came from a 14-year-old girl crying on the stairs, and a young man who'd decided, in that moment, that some lines shouldn't be crossed. "Caleb took a plea deal," Riley said, the words still strange on her tongue. "Martins called this morning. 25 years, no parole." Damon nodded. He didn't look triumphant, just tired. "Good. That's done then." "Is it ever really done?" Riley asked. Damon was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on her hip through her shirt. Another familiar gesture. "I don't know," he admitted. "I spent 8 years trying to make up for one night. Then you crashed into my car, and I saw a chance to—" He paused, searching for words. "To do it right. To protect you the way I should have protected your family." "You did protect my family," Riley said softly. "My dad told me what would have happened if you hadn't been there. We'd all be dead." What Riley learned about that night 6 months ago had changed everything, and what she was about to say would prove she'd finally made peace with it. She'd had that conversation with her father 2 months ago, after everything with Caleb had settled. He'd been reluctant to talk about it at first. But finally, he'd told her the truth. About the loan sharks, the threats, the night they'd come to collect, and about the young man who'd stepped in and called it off, who'd taken heat from his own crew to save a family of strangers. "I still dragged you into my world," Damon said. "Still put you in danger. You also saved my life," Riley countered. "Multiple times. You took bullets for me, Damon. Literal bullets." He'd recovered, though the scars remained. Riley had traced them with her fingers in quiet moments, each one a reminder of the warehouse, of the moment he'd chosen her over his own safety. "I'd do it again," Damon said simply. "Every time, without hesitation." Riley reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "I know. That's why I'm here. That's why I chose this." She gestured at the house, at the life they were building. Not because of debt or obligation or fear, but because underneath all the danger and darkness, I saw who you really are. "And who's that?" Damon asked, his voice rough. "Someone who keeps his promises," Riley said. "Someone who protects what he loves." She smiled. "Someone who tracked down a waitress who left an honest note in the rain and decided she was worth saving." Damon's expression softened in that way it only did with her. He leaned down and kissed her, slow and deep, and Riley felt the last piece of fear she'd been carrying melt away. This was real. This was safe. This was home. When they pulled apart, Damon rested his forehead against hers. "No more clubs, no more danger. Just this, just us." "Just us," Riley agreed. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The neighborhood was quiet except for the sound of kids playing down the street and a dog barking in the distance. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Riley thought about the note she'd written 6 months ago, standing in the rain beside a scratched Mercedes. How that single act of honesty had changed everything. How it had led her to this man, this house, this life she never could have imagined. "Do you ever regret it?" Damon asked quietly, like he could read her thoughts. "Leaving that note? If you could go back, would you just drive away?" Riley's answer to this question would prove that sometimes the most dangerous choice is exactly the right one. Riley considered the questions seriously. She thought about the fear, the danger, the nights she'd been sure she wouldn't survive. She thought about Caleb and the warehouse, and the sound of gunfire. She thought about all the ways this could have ended badly. Then she looked at Damon, at the man who'd walked away from an empire to build her a home, who'd transformed himself from a feared crime boss into someone who made her coffee in the morning and held her when she had nightmares about that night. "No," she said. "I wouldn't change anything." Damon smiled, and it reached his eyes. "Good," he said, "because neither would I." He took her hand and led her toward the living room, where the fireplace was already lit and the couch looked inviting. They had dinner plans later, at Rosie's, because Riley still worked there twice a week, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. Because Chloe was there, and the coffee was terrible, and it reminded her that she was still Riley Brooks, waitress who'd scratched a car and left a note. Just a different version. A braver one. A loved one. As they settled on the couch, Damon pulled a blanket over them both. Riley curled into his side, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Steady, strong, alive. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For tracking me down," Riley said. "For keeping me safe. For choosing me." Damon's arms tightened around her. "Always," he said. "I'll always choose you." And in that moment, with the fire crackling and the world outside quiet and peaceful, Riley believed him. She'd scratched his car and left a note, not knowing the feared Mafia boss would track her down. But now, 6 months later, she was grateful he had. Because sometimes, the most dangerous choice turns out to be the right one. And sometimes, honesty doesn't just cost you everything. Sometimes, it gives you everything instead.